we have that access. So you want to hit your OK button as that came up. And I would like to introduce Kim Richmond. She is the WNCCM Creation Care Coordinator, and she is our go-to person to review things that we're doing. And she is passionate about creation care and justice, and we appreciate her volunteer time as she leads the Western North Carolina Conference. And today she will be sharing some information for you, as well as giving a time of prayer for us. And in the chat box, you'll see again the questions that you can answer. If you already have a creation care team, you don't need to answer that as well. So let us begin. Kim?
Hello. Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate that. And welcome everybody, as Nancy said. Real quick, I'm not sure. I saw a few names. Dawn sent out one link that ended up with her name on it. So if you look at your picture and it has other than your name on it, would you just take a minute and rename it? We love to see who's here with us today. And you can do that by on your little picture, click on the three dots in the upper right corner, and a drop down menu will come down and it'll be rename at the bottom, and then just type in your name and we would appreciate that. So it's super to see everybody here. And I am going to start out with a prayer for us today that is actually taken from the hymn book, and it is hymn number 144. This is my Father's world. So this is my Father's world is very special to me because my grandmother, who was a Methodist pastor's wife, taught me to play the piano, and this was one of these hymns that I learned to play the piano with. And so let us bow our heads and just lift this praise to our Father as we start. This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears all nature sings, and round me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world, I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees, of skies and seas, his hand the wonders wrought. This is my Father's world, the birds their carols raise, the morning light, the lily white, declare their Maker's praise. This is my Father's world, he shines in all that's fair. In the rustling grass, I hear him pass, he speaks to me everywhere. This is my Father's world, oh, let me ne'er forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world, why should my heart be sad? The Lord is King, let the heavens ring. God reigns, let the earth be glad. Amen. So thank you for that. Now, we're going to really just cover one new addition to the Book of Discipline. And it's very short, but it has a lot of meat to it that we can talk about. I'm going to share some ideas about this that we have and ask you all to share some of your ideas on how we can live into this specific one. So it was recommended and approved that we amend section or paragraph 603 of the Book of Discipline, which is related to annual conference organization, by adding the part in blue to the sentence that's already there. So the sentence is on number 4, the annual conference sessions shall be held in places that are accessible to people with disabilities. And then the new part in blue is, and that when possible, have sustainable practices for energy, waste, and consumption. So we have a beautiful location where we get to have our annual conference each year. And this just happened to be a picture that I took this year when I was at the annual conference. The clouds and everything lined up for me just perfectly as I was out taking a walk. And so, and this was what prompts the idea of this is my Father's world as well. I mean, we have such a beautiful location in which to hold our annual conference and other meetings throughout the year, but to hold our annual conference, gather everyone from our conference together in such a beautiful location. And so something that our team has looked at, the Creation Care Ministry team has looked at for the past few years when we've attended, is we've been trying to take some notes on things that we think are really good about the sustainability practices at Lake Junaluska, and some that are available for improvement, I think. And we've made a little progress in a couple of things. But as we go through this, if you've been to annual conference, you may have some ideas, but this is also applicable in your own churches and even in your own homes in some instances. So even if you've never been to an annual conference, I think that you can take maybe something away from the message today. But actually what's legislated, of course, is for our annual conference sessions. So I'm going to do the waste and consumption portion first. They're pretty linked, very much so, because what we consume often goes in the trash can or is some of the waste. And then Reverend Jonathan Brake, who has been one of our presentation leaders before, he's going to hop in on the energy and a few other things that are some things that we could be doing, make recommendations to Lake Junaluska for improvement. So the first thing is on sustainability regarding waste. And one of the things that came to mind first off is just we have so many hard copies of the books that we look at. And so the program and reports book is what, 108 pages, the supplements 48 pages, and the worship books are 68 pages. And I'm not sure, I've heard the figure of how many people attend annual conference, but it is certainly in the hundreds, if not up to 1,000. But I think it's probably in, yeah, Jonathan's saying great. Do you have an idea, Jonathan, of the numbers? But it's
I'm not sure what the numbers are now. I know, with disaffiliations and everything, but we had at one time well over 1,500 who would be there
right,
in Stewart Auditorium. So, yeah, a lot of booklets.
right. So a lot of booklets, and each person, when they arrive, each delegate, they receive a copy, hard copy of these books, or had until last year. So or this year, actually, 2024 annual conference, we were able to get the supplement, which is 48 pages long, was available primarily on digital, on electronic format. You could ask for a hard copy if you needed that. And then this year, we have had someone propose to us that they think that the worship books should be handled differently, because not everyone there attends worship and not everyone attends all of the worship services. So proposal possibly that there would be something like we have in our local churches, where you have a bulletin for that individual service that would be just based on the numbers of people, or there would be an electronic copy. So that is a room for improvement, but it's also something that we're considering proposing at this year's annual conference, that be handled differently. And then we have our program and reports book, which is 108 pages as it now stands. They still print those off and provide those to every person there. We learned something though this year by having the supplement available primarily on digital or electronic format, is that Stewart Auditorium needs to have a change in bandwidth. So that's something that we can propose, that they upgrade their bandwidth so that everyone can try to get on that. And when they can get on there, they can actually have the bandwidth to do that. So that is certainly a consideration. So that would save paper. And certainly, even though that gets recycled, you still cut down the trees to produce the paper. So the first, you want to reduce rather than recycle. If you can't do that, we hope that everyone is recycling. That's the waste portion. And then another form of waste that we could think of was all of the bottled water that is sold in plastic bottles. Once again, we would propose that you have reusable, refillable water bottles, which would probably require more refill stations. Now, we also found out this year, when in pursuing this, that they do already have that recommendation in writing from the conference staff that goes out and encourages everyone to use reusable, refillable water bottles. Some do, some don't, but it's an area for growth. And then they also sell it there. So that is an idea on the consumption arena, and we'll revisit that when we go into that. But they would, probably one thing would be to encourage more refill stations so that they're more prominent and that people would see them and make sure that they bring their reusable water bottles. And then one thing that is very popular is that each table at these events have some bling or some handouts or giveaways, whatever you want to call them, as you walk around and people collect those. And we try at our Creation Care Ministry table to give thought to those. This year we gave out locally grown organic peaches. And we made some fans that had our information on them that could be used. They were on paper, could be used during the sessions, and have some different things that are, and have a QR code maybe that people could go to visit some things, but something to encourage all of the tables there to be thoughtful in what they're handing out so that it's not just taken and tossed. It's one thing if it's used. It's another thing if you think, oh, that's cool, I'm going to pick that up, I'm going to collect everything, and you take it home and stick it in a drawer and you never use it again. So an encouragement for everyone who has a table to be thoughtful in the sustainability aspect of their handouts would be great. Of course, the single-use plastics, a lot of times don't have to be single-use, or they could be reduced or decreased or avoided altogether. That would possibly be in your food service areas where we ask them not to use single-use plastics. And then they have a few recycle bins, but we certainly noticed that a lot of times they weren't well marked and could be more prominently displayed, and a lot more of them, and maybe some signage that would state what is recyclable and what could go in those. And then composting of food waste, which would keep that out of the landfill, which creates the methane emissions. And there may be other areas, and at the end, we'll give you a chance to maybe, or you can drop them into the chat if you can think of other things that would help decrease waste at the annual conference event. So that was some of our ideas. And then on the sustainability portion that's related to the consumption, like I said, that it's often linked very closely to the waste, because the way that our current system, of course, economic system primarily, is it's a straight line. It's you buy it, you use it a little bit, and then you throw it away. And we've come to rely on products that are noted to be recyclable, but we're learning more and more and more that there is not a market for those recyclables. And so we don't want to count on plastics and things using them just because they will be recyclable, because oftentimes those still end up in the trash. So those are linked very closely, consumption and waste. And one thing that could help with making consumption more sustainable would be to offer fewer meat entrees, or offer one meat entree and then offer more vegetarian and vegan food options. Because where the sustainability comes in with your greenhouse gas emissions, it is well proven that those generated to raise beef are much, much higher than for those generated in raising vegetables or the vegan food options. And vegetarian is second, and then vegan is the best on greenhouse gas emissions. So if they offered more of those options, that would make the consumption, because a lot of what is done there is feeding the masses. You've got to feed the masses. And so if you have more sustainable options available, and then a campaign on as to why that would be appropriate, you have to educate it all the time. Once again, although you're not purchasing the handouts and the bling and the giveaways and stuff, you are consuming that product. And so that would be another education of not only the people who are offering those items, but also the people who are picking them up. So you want to educate everyone about that. And then the water refill stations was another area that, rather than purchasing soda, rather than purchasing bottled waters and then throwing away or even recycling that, it would be the reduction. And it makes it, there are greenhouse gas emissions just to produce those items, to produce the aluminum, to put the sodas into it, to transport it. If you have a water bottle that you've purchased and you can bring that in, then that is a more sustainable consumption option, not just related to the waste. So those are the ideas that we had come up with as a team and that I had shared. And I'm not seeing the chat while I'm speaking here and have this up, but we'll visit that here a little bit later and see if anyone has thrown any other ideas into the chat feature. And then we will go on to sustainability for energy and some other items that Jonathan is going to highlight for us.
Yeah, so at Lake Junaluska for annual conference, one of the things that has been done in recent years is a little bit of efficiency work especially in the Terrace Hotel and some other places. There's more that could be done on campus, but some things that we're thinking about encouraging from Lake Junaluska is what you see on the screen here: solar, wind, and whatever else we had. There we go, water and more.
Sorry.
Yeah. So you may be aware that right now Lake Junaluska is kind of a headquarters of Western North Carolina disaster response. And a lot of people are staying on campus who are teams of disaster response from all over the Southeast. Um, and as we think about their ability to do that kind of work, if the power is lost, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to do that kind of work if there were solar and wind energy abilities there? Being in the mountains, there's wind much of the time. There are plenty of rooftops on buildings and such that can have solar panels put on those. And so part of what we want to look at is how can we, as the Western North Carolina Conference, encourage Lake Junaluska to move in this direction. I know there's been talk about it, but helping them to move in that direction could move us toward not just an annual conference event, but a year-round facility that is saving energy, and we can be a part of that. And so we're looking in that direction. When it comes to water, one of the things that our Western North Carolina disaster response team has been looking at is trailers that are sort of like the military uses for water, and it can be filled up at somewhere and then brought onto campus and could be utilized for those water bottle refilling stations as we're looking for ways for people to bring their own water bottles and refill them. And an additional item that is just on the horizon is a solar powered water processing unit, which is basically a large dehumidifier, and it can pull moisture directly out of the air and distill that into water that can then be used as water filling stations. And so that's something that we're looking at as an annual conference for disaster response. As you think about the Asheville area, where I think like 80% of the water capacity is still not working, that's the kind of thing that could be used for disasters, but we could bring it right over to annual conference and actually produce water out of, I wouldn't call it thin air because sometimes it's so humid it feels pretty thick. So produce water right out of the humid air there at the lake. And so these are things that we're looking at for the future of annual conference, but can also be utilized, as Kim said, for your local church activities and events. And especially the water trailer, if you're having a festival or an outdoor event or something, the annual conference may have equipment that your local church could use, and maybe for a small rental fee just to cover the cost of maintenance and keeping it, transporting it to you and back, you could use some of this equipment as well. So these are things that we're looking toward for trying to live into what our book of discipline now says for annual conference events. And just as a side note, the first part of that statement from the Kim, pull that statement back up for the slide you had there. So that first part of that statement where it's talking about being a place for that's accessible to people with disabilities, this came up several years ago, and the big question was, can we still go to annual conference at Lake Junaluska because of some of the accessibility issues? And that statement led Lake Junaluska to do some work on the property to make it more accessible, make it easier for wheelchairs and walkers and people with canes and things like that to get around. And so we know that a statement like this in the Book of Discipline has made a difference in where we go to annual conference. And we're excited about this second part of the statement that moves us in the direction of sustainable practices. So we know it can happen. All we have to do is get behind it and say, all right, Lake Junaluska, let's work with you. Not you got to do this for us, but how can we help you bring this about for our annual conference, which is, as far as I understand, still the largest event they do in the year, but it would be something that could change the campus for all events and activities that happen there year round. So that's where we're headed with it. Kim, back to you.
That's great. Thank you, Jonathan. There's another resource, and I didn't pull it up for today, but we can send it out in next week's email. And that is the United Women in Faith. They have 13 items that are for sustainable events. And we can share that with all of you just as something to consider. And I think what we want to see going forward, if we can, is just, as Jonathan said, ways to work together to make this better. I mean, ultimately, if you change some of your energy practices, it can save money for, like, if the hotels put it on or whatever. It's just sometimes being made aware that we would like to look for that. And so this verbiage in here really can help, and it gives some meat to going to the people at Lake Junaluska and saying, we think you guys do a great event. Here's what we'd like to work towards. We're mandated or we're guided by our denomination to do this. So I was going to see Dawn. I don't know if we've had any other ideas pop up in the chat or if we've had any questions, but
I haven't seen any, but I will keep checking for sure. Thank you.
That's great. Well, I think pretty much, unless anyone wants to unmute their microphone and share any ideas or comments that they might have, we will give you a chance to do that here. If not, then we might just be gone for the day and wait to see you all again next Wednesday, same time, same place. I'm going to show my age. Every time I say that, I think same bat time, same bat station. I watched too much Batman when I was younger, I guess. But anyhow, so we will see you. We'll leave on that, real highlight that's related to creation care. And we'll hope to see you all next week. Thanks for taking your time to be here.
Thank you.